Okay guys, so this lesson is going to be over the quadratic formula. Recall that your quadratic formula deals with a's, b's, and c's. So your a term goes with your x squared, b goes with your x term, and your c is your constant term, and it's always equal to 0, just like we did in the previous lesson. So your quadratic formula is x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, I'm not going to sing some Pop Goes the Weasel song, but if you want to remember it using Pop Goes the Weasel, be my guest. You have to memorize this. I'm not going to give this to you. You have to know how to solve quadratics. Okay? So, the term b squared minus 4ac, whatever's underneath the square root, is called the discriminant. The discriminant tells you what type of roots you're going to have. Okay? So if b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, you're going to have two real roots. So what does this mean? So it's going to cross the x-axis twice. Okay? If b squared minus 4ac is negative, you're going to have two imaginary roots. So imaginary roots means that it's not going to cross the x-axis. Okay, that can be up here, it can be downward. And then you have something called a double root if it's equal to 0. Okay, so a double root means it touches in exactly one spot. Doesn't cross it, but it touches it. Okay, so that's called a double root. It's tangent in one spot. Okay, so our example problems. Determine the nature of the roots given the following quadratic equations. So we're going to do b squared minus 4ac for each one of these. Okay, so b squared minus 4ac, this is your a, your b, your c. So negative 5 squared minus 4, your a is 1, and your c is 7. Negative 5 squared is 25. 25 minus 28 is a negative 3. Okay, so if our discriminant comes out to be negative, it's going to be two imaginary roots. And we know how to find those now because we know how to deal with i's. Okay, next one, x squared plus 5x plus 7. Okay, so we're going to do b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so 25 minus 28, again, nothing changed. So we're going to get two imaginary roots. Okay, do b squared minus 4ac for this. So negative 30 squared minus 4a and c. Okay, 30 squared is 900. 36 plus 25. I don't mind if you use a calculator for this. Comes out to be 900. So since it's equal to 0, it's one double root. And that's it. So that's how we use the discriminant to tell us what type of roots we're going to have. That's also called the nature of the roots. Okay, this does show up on SAT, so you need to make sure you know how to do it. Now, we're going to use the quadratic formula to solve the following quadratic equations. Okay, so we're going to have a mixture of all the types of equations we've dealt with. Okay, so the first one. We're going to do opposite of b, so it's 4 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is going to be 16, minus 4. Your a is 1, and your c is 2. All over 2 times 1, 2a. Okay, so 16 minus 8 is 8. And we can break down the square root of 8 to 2 square roots of 2. Right, we go and do our little factor tree, 4 and 2, 2 and 2, like that. Now, we can cancel a 2 from each of those terms. So cancel a 2, 2, that becomes a 2, so this becomes 2 plus or minus square root of 2. Those are your answers. And you should have two answers because we're dealing with the squared. If you had a cubic, you would have 3 answers. Okay, x squared minus 5x minus 1. So we're going to do opposite of b, so 5 plus or minus square root of negative 5 squared. Negative 5 squared is 25 minus 4, a, and your c is a negative 1, all over 2 times 1. Make sure when you square anything, no matter what it is, it's always positive. Don't use your calculator for negative 5 squared, please. So a negative times a negative is a positive, so this turns into 29. So it's 5 plus or minus square root of 29 all over 2. That's our answer. Square root of 29, 29 is prime, so we're not going to break it down. Okay, next one. Opposite of b, so it's going to be 5 plus or minus square root of negative 5 squared, which is going to be 25 minus 4, a, and your c is 3. All over 2 times 2. Okay, so 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24, so I get a 1. So 5 plus or minus square root of 1 is 1. So it's 5 plus or minus 1 over 4. And then we're going to go ahead and simplify this. So 5 plus 1 is 6. So 6 fourths, which is equal to 3 halves, right? And then 5 minus 1 is 4. 4 divided by 4 is equal to 1. Next question, opposite of b. So change the sign of that. So we get 1 plus or minus square root of 1 squared, negative 1 squared, minus 4. Your a is 4, and your c is 2. All over 2 times 4. Okay, so negative 1 squared is 1. Okay, so 16 times 2 is 32. So 1 minus 32 is a negative 31 over 8. Now, when we have square roots of negative numbers, we're going to factor out I, like we did a couple lessons ago. And that's what we get. Square root of 31 is a breakdown. Okay, so remember, whenever it's not equal to 0, you have to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to move everything over. Always want to try and have a positive x squared term. Okay, so we're going to do opposite of b, so negative 2 plus or minus square root of b squared, which is 4 minus 4. Your a is 4, and your c is a negative 1. All over 2a. Okay, so a negative times a negative is a positive, so it's 16 plus 4 is 20. Over 8. And square root of 20 is going to break down into 2 square root of 5. Okay, so if we went out to the side and did this, square root of 20, factors of that are 5 and 4, and this breaks down to 2 and 2. And we bring that to the outside of the radical. Okay, so we can cancel a 2 from each term. So this becomes negative 1 plus or minus square root of 5 all over 4. Okay, next one. So what's different about this one? Well, it deals with square root. Still worked exactly the same way. So negative square root of 3 plus or minus square root of b squared. Square root of 3 squared is 3 minus 4a, and your c is a negative 3. All over 2 times 1. Okay. Negative 4 times negative 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15, so it's negative square root of 3 plus or minus square root of 15 all over 2. And square root of 15 doesn't break down, square root of 3 doesn't break down, so we're just going to leave it like that. And that's perfectly acceptable. So hopefully this was a good little review of quadratic formula. Make sure that you know that the discriminant tells you what type of roots you're going to have. If your discriminant's positive, it's going to be 2 real roots. If your discriminant's negative, it's going to be 2 imaginary roots. And if your discriminant is equal to 0, it's going to be a double root. Okay, and make sure you know that 2 real roots means that it crosses the x-axis in 2 spots. 2 imaginary roots doesn't cross at all. And a double root means that it's going to be tangent at exactly 1 point. Okay, so thanks and have a good night.